Blending is not self-explanatory. There isn't just one way to blend. There are thousands of ways. And maybe you struggle with painting because you don't really understand blending and all the possibilities that it gives you. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, blending. And I want to start with the two main categories. I said that there are thousands of ways to blend, and obviously that's true. For each painting, there's an infinite number of possibilities, but they can mostly be split into two main types: dry blending and wet blending. So dry blending is pretty simple. You just take a brush that doesn't have any paint on and you blend like that dry, and you cover the area separating the two painted areas until they blend. By going very softly, you create a nice blend, and that's dry blending. And next, wet blending is when you prepare the mix of the two colors. You mix it on the palette. You can mix with your palette knife. And then you add this one. And then you can do another wet blending here between this one and this one, like so. And then another one between this red here and this mixed red-orange, like so. Again with the middle color here, like so, and over until you reach the desired blend that you want. And you might think, okay, but it looks very similar here. What's the difference, and why does it matter that there are two, like this is dry and this is wet? The difference is this one is subtractive, so you take some of the paint off, and this one is additive, so you bring more paint in the mix. Wet blending is mostly going to be preferred by those who want to paint alla prima, who want to keep a vibrant look. So if you want to keep brushstrokes alive, like so, for example, you'll mix some of this and you'll add, more texture by making brushstrokes apparent. You can also blend somehow with a palette knife, use impasto. If you do that with a palette knife, you need to add and incorporate some of the color in the middle. You can keep your color vibrant and you keep the texture alive. With this technique, it's definitely going to remove most of the brush marks. So this would be preferred by tight painters, and this would be preferred by loose painters. If you're a very tight painter, you want to remove as much of the brush strokes as you can. And if you're a loose painter, you want to let the brush strokes appear. So yeah, ultimately for this small, very simple demonstration, it doesn't make such a huge difference, but I can assure you that for the final look of the painting, it definitely makes a difference whether you do some wet blending or dry blending. Again, just to clarify, because you're a tight painter doesn't mean that you're going to exclusively blend dry. You can also be tight and blend wet. Both types of painters will use both. The thing is, it doesn't really accomplish the same thing. This is to get rid of as many brushstrokes as possible, and this is to keep the texture and the consistency of the paint layer as thick as possible and preserve the vitality of the. This will have a tendency to lower the chromatic power, lower the vibrancy of the colors, which will create something much more seamless, whereas this will be much more crude in terms of blending, but it will keep the paint very much alive and full of, vibrant brushstrokes. Next part, you might wonder what kind of brush is best for blending. Is there a specific type of brush that you would use for blending? It all depends on the type of blending that you want to do. For something like dry blending, if your goal is to get rid of as many brushstrokes as possible, you want something very soft. So some good brushes for dry blending would definitely be very soft bristle brushes like these sables here. Doesn't have to be natural hairs. Some synthetic can also bring this very nice smoothness that will just blend all the brush marks together and create something very seamless. Now, a classic would be a fan brush, but it's not necessarily something that I recommend because it has a tendency to be kind of excessive in how much it blends. It blends a bit too much. It has a tendency to kill the consistency of the paint, and it's almost like blending with a broom. Instead of a fan brush, if I have to blend a very large surface, I'd rather use something like that, an oval wash. Sometimes it's called a mop. The thing is, you don't want to get rid of all of your texture. So it really depends, but sometimes the fan brush is just too much and this would be better. Another super cool thing if you're into making your paintings as seamless as you can is that once the brushes are no longer in shape, like this one used to be sharp and pointy like this one, but it's not anymore, it's completely worn off, and it actually makes a wonderful blending brush, a round, small blending brush. I use this one for skin tones, and it's definitely huge. It's really helpful for portraits, for figures. This one would be for details, and when it's gone, when it's out of shape, I'll keep it and it will make a very good blending brush. Now, if you're more into wet blending, you might want to use a brush that will preserve more of the texture of the brush mark, that will give a very nice, vibrant brush stroke, and for that, a filbert would be the ideal shape. Filbert is this shape right here. This is a flat, this is a synthetic, and this is hog bristle filbert as well. The filbert hog bristle combo is generally a very good choice if you want to make some interesting brush marks on your painting. Now, next question about blending is the medium. Do you need a medium to blend or not? It depends really. It depends on the consistency of your paint out of the tube. It depends on what type of brush you're using. And there is not one single rule about the consistency of your paint that I can give you. It's really all about the feeling, and it's not something that I can describe. However, there are a couple of ground rules that you can keep in mind, depending on whether you want the blending to be seamless or keep the brush marks apparent. One key principle is that sometimes it's easier to make seamless transitions with paint that's more buttery and has a heavier consistency. In this case, this is the consistency of the paint straight out of the tube, so I added no medium, and as you can see, blending is pretty easy with a soft bristle brush and with no medium at all. Now, if I add some medium, you'll see that it will kind of change the entire consistency and will make it more difficult for me because it's less opaque, less thick, and the blending is not as easy. See, in this case, I have too much medium and blending gets difficult because the paint doesn't hold itself as well and it just wants to slide away everywhere. I'm, of course, exaggerating, but the principle applies nonetheless. When you add more medium, it makes the brush strokes more fluid, so you can create some cool effects, but it also makes blending less easy. Believe it or not, but adding medium is not necessarily very helpful for a seamless blending. However, medium is still necessary if you want to create some interesting textures. So if you're more into loose painting and you want to create some interesting blending with apparent brushstrokes, in this case, you would need the fluidity that a medium brings. The way I like to picture it with mediums and consistency, it's imagine that it's between milk, so full liquid, not really something you want, or full, almost solid, like butter. And you want something in the middle. And depending on how fluid you want to get more towards milk or towards butter. All right, I hope you like this analogy. It doesn't really make sense, but it just helps me visualize the consistency of the paint. All right, let's move on. One super useful thing is feathering. It's mostly useful for dry blending, but it can be used also in wet blending situations. And feathering is using a very soft brush and very calmly, almost not touching. So that would be feathering, feathered strokes, very, very soft like that. And it really helps if you have something relatively large in terms of your brush, very soft, and you hold it from as far as you can from the ferrule, like that. Next thing is also the direction of the blending. It plays a key role in how the final blended area will look. And you can do cross blending like that by going across. So blending across will be more powerful, more blended, and it will also reinforce the impression of volume, the roundness of the form. And the other option is to go down like that. You can follow the lines and follow the curves. It's more a follow the curves kind of approach, whereas cross blending is more all about the roundness of the shape. But overall, it doesn't really matter that much, because sometimes you just can't do cross blending because you don't have enough room, or you can't do down blending because you don't have the space. So what really matters is the size of your brush related to the size of the area that you want to blend, and also how comfortable the gesture will be. You want to prioritize the type of blending that will make the gesture as easy as possible for you. Final thing I want to say about blending is this. In many regards, blending is not something you can teach. Like, I can try to describe to you how blending works, principles of blending and all, but blending is more something that you have to practice with your hands, like first-hand experience, because a lot of this blending, how successful your blending is going to be about the gesture. It's all in the gesture. So moral of the story is practice, practice, practice. There is nothing that beats blending. And realistically, you can spend your entire art career working on your blending techniques, and you'll still have tons of things to discover if you combine all the techniques, the types of brushes, the types of surfaces, the mediums, the cross blending, down blending, the gesture, and ultimately the work of your hand, the pressure, the control that you have on your brush, how connected you feel to your brush, and that's the entire fun of painting. That's so enjoyable. All right, so you have fun using all these techniques, and I'll see you for the next one, my friends. As always, joy and inspiration to you. Bye.